Okay,
And
yes. We are on. We are on. Happy almost New Year, everyone. Happy New Year's Eve. I guess we'll figure out who doesn't have a life by who shows up here instead of going to party. So far, it's Esso, Hoplu, and Johnny. How you guys doing?
Hello.
I'm doing well.
Shade! Don't you know I got nothing better to do with my boring existence? Other than waiting for the inevitable asteroid? Because, to be honest, I'm all getting a little tired of the censorship nonsense.
It's not that I don't have a life, it's just that nobody around here is cool, so I don't go to
That can
parties.
make a difference, yeah. Hoplu, you are going to have a live stream of your own after we get done here, so you want to tell us about that?
Oh, absolutely. I was just about to say, right after this stream, I'm going to go over to my own channel, and I'm gonna do a look back live stream. I'm gonna stream basically all the videos I did this year, as well as a bunch of animations I did like years ago, like 2011 to 2017, and a lot of them are privatized, so they aren't available on my channel. So if you want to see some shit I did that you can't find on YouTube, well, just come on over to my stream as soon as we're done here.
We've also got a chat room that's filling up already, and of course the super chat is available. I will read out super chats unless you do something like try to use the N-word or something to get my channel taken down. Don't do that.
Knowing those guys, they probably will. And
they will now that I've said it. If I'd kept my mouth shut, they probably wouldn't, but now they're going.
Yeah, Shane, you might want to stop putting your foot in your mouth before they get you.
I mean, you don't exactly have to read them out. All it means is that they're giving you free money for something that you won't do.
Yeah, don't.
I know.
Everybody,
but I like reading them out. I like giving people that carrot, just to read it out if they, it's a little incentive.
Everybody spam try hard in chat.
Uh-oh.
But hey, at least you're not here with a dude with a skeleton for an alter ego, a skeleton astronaut, I may add, a whatever the hell Hopaloo is, and
I knew you were going to say that.
I don't even know what you are, dude.
Whatever he is, he's dressed very nicely. He's dressed very nicely. Whatever he is, he's got the suit and bow tie and all that.
Yeah, I like to view myself as a knockoff of Pestilence, like a cheap bootleg.
I thought you were a knockoff of Hoodie Demon first time I saw you.
No, I actually have like
where is that guy anyway?
I actually have like a history of like how this design came to be, and I might talk about it on my channel. But let's just say I did actually have it before I became an ANCAP and before I knew who Hoodie was. So
the chat room says you're a scaly.
No,
what now?
What? What?
I don't know. That's just what it is. This Omen.
Scaly.
What proof
on
do you have?
Earth is a scaly?
It's basically
I've heard that.
Like a furry, only a reptile.
Yeah. The reptile equivalent of furry.
But guys, no. Only a reptile's eyes can glow like that.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
No, because there are fish that have glowy eyes like that.
You see, it's in the eyes. You can clearly see.
Nerd.
Of course, I guess fish have scales too, so I guess you'd still be a scaly.
I actually like to think that Hoplu's sort of like made of cloth, like say the Oogie Boogie Man from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nerd.
Yeah.
Someone should put a nerd counter.
Yeah.
Locker people, I swear to God.
Oh. Oop. You got $5.
Okay, that took the Hangout downhill in less than 5 minutes. How are we going to get up from this? Oh, super chat. Here we go. Scorch88, thanks for saving us. Thank you, Shane, for the past year of content. Please keep it up as bed never stop. Happy 2019. What was the best moment for you in 2019? Well, thanks for all the.
I think it's 2018 still.
Yeah, 2019 hasn't happened yet, but I don't know what the best moment of 2018 was. I mean, I had the ups, I had the downs, I had the good times, I had the bad. It's just been one of the. It was a hell of a lot better in 2017. 2017 really sucked for me.
2017 was kind of boring. Like, I mean, I know that's the year that I got started, but I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like a whole lot happened in 2017.
2017 was the year the Orange Man got into power, and all the NPCs were just.
Like that was the year, like my car got totaled. I had to get a new one. My garage door broke down. I had to get another one. My hot water heater broke down. I had to get my septic tank filled. Just all that stuff happening in 2017. It's like, God, what is this year doing to me?
Oh my goodness. This year, though, for me, like, this was like, it's one of those, a lot of good things happened, but at the same time, a lot of really, really bad things happened. Like, I think anyone who's followed me knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, this year was it had its ups, and the thing with this year is every year is kind of like that. There's ups and downs, but this year it was like the good moments were just extrememely good. Like that was through the roof awesome. Then the terrible moments.
Anarchist XL03 in chat says Hopper is fans because of the skeleton motif.
But yeah, the bad stuff this year is like probably never gonna forget it. It's gonna always happen.
Oh, we got another super chat. Daniel Corsica for $10 American says, "Good morning, guys. Happy New Year. I gotta leave for work at 10, but don't cry for me. I'm getting double time and a half. Woohoo! Wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
Sounds great, and at least you're not like Heather, where you have to work around customers going and getting all their stuff for 2018. They're going to be getting beer, and they're going to be getting all the sort of stuff, and they're going to be stupid, and they're going to piss her off. So he's got me to come home to, though. So I think that's
one thing. I think is I am glad for is that at the very least, the herd of neocon warmongers has thinned by at least 2 people.
Oh yeah, John McCain and HW bit the dust.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, but that means we had to put up with even people like on the far left, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying about, oh, he was such a good and decent public servant. It's like, bullshit. He promoted torture and Guantanamo Bay and, endless wars.
Exactly. I mean, the amount of stupid coming from Cortez.
This is the kind of thing.
People an aneurysm.
This is the kind of thing I've noticed, like, throughout the past years. Like, both times when Trump decided to be hostile towards Syria, like, for chemical charges, the sort of endless barrage of Trump hysteria syndrome just suddenly stood still. Yet whenever he decides, oh, well, let's have some peace or let's have some do this, even though I know for a fact that him pulling the troops out of Syria was for Turkey's sake, but whatever. People just go fucking mad. Just insane.
That's exactly why we need to reopen mental institutions, because these people are not fit to be part of civilized society.
I don't really care if he does the right thing for the wrong reasons, because he's still doing the right thing. And it's just like, okay, get us out of the other 160, however many countries our troops are in. That's one. Now you got to do the rest.
An article was just published on Forbes. I can't even believe this is real. I just got a link. Listen to the title. Galaxy may be littered with dead aliens blindsided by climate change.
Yeah, okay.
What?
Wow, really?
Are you sure you haven't just stumbled on the Onion?
No, it's Forbes.
I think this is the kind of thing, like when I was growing up, it was the Cold War, and nuclear war was a very real threat back then. And so everyone was saying, well, maybe the reason why there aren't any alien civilizations is they blew themselves up in a nuclear war. And I guess now climate change is the new nuclear war. So that must be what happened to the aliens.
Yep.
And you wonder why they won't visit us.
I mean, much like nuclear war, it's even more absurd in this case because the science for it. I mean, this is a classic case of the demarcation fallacy, where climate change can basically explain everything to the point where it's meaningless. Now, I'm not saying that climate change doesn't exist. I'm talking about anthropogenic climate change. You know, the man-made climate change.
Well, I'm fairly convinced of that, but I don't think that, because it's like there is the solution to this staring them in the face, which is nuclear power. And that's one of the big things they're against. So that makes it a little hard to take them seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. No, I even if it was real, there is, of course, the nuclear power solution. You know, I would still argue that the market was a more
the jerk in the chat
efficient
says aliens won't visit us because they saw the furries.
They're jealous of us because of that.
Maybe aliens are furries. You don't know.
Yeah.
What?
Anyway,
why not? There could be a furry planet out there.
I mean, you can't deny that furries, like say a furry alien.
Why does
would
Hoplu
be good
sound like an alien version of Kermit the Frog?
cold weather?
but yeah,
Forget I asked.
Climate change makes shorter winters. Climate change makes for harsher and longer winters. Climate change means less snow. Climate change means more snow. Climate change causes droughts in California. Climate change also causes floods in Texas and Oklahoma. You get the idea. It's just complete. It explains everything to the point where it's not even making a specific claim. It's completely unscientific. It's rhetorical at this point.
It's like the rights equivalent of the race. The races.
Well, because it's
Omen Rose also
such a
says, James, this is the last thing I thought you would say.
But it's just such a politically charged thing that, I mean, you know, of course, everyone is going to try to say, hey, see, this problem is caused by, you know, global warming, just like, oh, this problem is caused by immigrants, or this problem is caused, you know, by, you know, China selling us cheap stuff or whatever. It's the same kind of thing.
Hold up, let me get you this this tweet that Molly meme made.
Oh,
where is it?
Oh my god.
Let me read it to you. Yeah, Stephen
Molyneux.
Yeah. He is gone. Let me read to you what he says. The housing crash resulted from refusing to talk about racial IQ differences.
What?
Disparities in racial rates of home ownership were ascribed to racism unqualified minorities.
While you're busy being that, Daniel Corsica for $5 American says, Donald Trump causes climate change. Orange man bad. Read!
The difference is,
sorry if I hurt everyone's eardrum.
Yeah.
The difference is, I'm assuming that unlike that tweet, that Corica is being facetious, but
like this is, I know, I'm sure that most of us here are Austrians.
I'm not.
I'm from North Carolina, thank you very much.
I'm from Illinois, thank you.
I'm not from Austrian economist.
Well,
like
the thing with Stefan Molyneux,
I have an art degree.
He's made multiple videos explaining what caused the banking crash of 2008, and you know, he explained essentially exactly what the Austrians are saying. So whatever he's talking about now, I mean, he is just so far gone, and this year has been like one of the worst. I mean, he's gone. I don't know if he, you know, you call him an ethno-statist quite yet, but yeah, he's leaning that direction, definitely.
Yep. He likes, like, this, you can't, this is the problem with statism, and how it rots your brain and makes you look for talking points as opposed to economics. Like, the Austrians, it wouldn't matter if everyone taking those bad loans were white. It happens in dominantly white countries too. This is the reality of central fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, but the motivation of a lot of it was, oh, it's horrible that, black people don't have the same level of home ownership. But the reason why is that as a group, they're generally in a lower, socioeconomic class, which means the only reason, the only way that you can get more of them, these home loans at lower interest rates, is to relax lending standards. And what happens when you relax lending standards?
That
you get artificial growth, obviously. You get a lot you get a lot of loans created and given to people who can't afford their houses. And that's what caused the 2008
and
crash.
then that causes Lord Killian to blow a gasket.
Explained that before, which is
and it makes it look to the market like there's more demand for housing than there really is.
Yeah. Like, even then, the reason why they did this sort of stuff wasn't because, oh, well, we can't talk about racism. It's because of the fact that bankers make money off loans.
I mean, I don't know what's
even if they're bad fake loans, well, they're going to make more money anyways. And if they fail, well, they can get bailed out.
I mean, I don't know.
Arms in the chat says, okay, rape my stupid.
I don't know what's more depressing, the fact that, Stefan Molyneux, someone who in 2008 was calling this out for what actually caused it, is now saying crap like this, or the fact that it's 2019 and there's still people arguing that it was rich people having too much money that caused the recession.
It's the same.
It's not 2019 yet, Fluffball. God.
He's
That's
anxious.
The second time.
People are anxious for the new year. They want the year of the NPC to be over. So
the same thing happened with 2016. Like, you remember that? Like, people just hated
it was the most beautiful amount of despair I've ever seen in my long and storied life in God's green and verdant earth.
Oh man, could you imagine what that's gonna be like when the state's gone? Innovated out of existence, by the way. Can you imagine what that's going to be like? You thought 2016 was amazing. The reaction that was elicited from some statists in response to their controlled opposition candidate, they don't like being elected. Oh, once the state's gone, oh my, it's going to be, not only is it, first of all, it's going to be everybody.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so much salt. Conservatives and
so much despair from both sides.
Even just what's it going to be like by the time that cryptocurrencies become commonplace? Imagine.
Oh my God! I don't think I can take that much despair without exploding into 1,000 mini Johns.
Yeah, we're not to the point where some of them are seen as being interchangeable yet, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. They are commonplace. I remember talking quite extensively about how only like a month ago, it was more like 2 or 3 weeks realistically, that Bitcoin overtook MasterCard in daily transactions. And then on top of that, you were just explaining, Shane, about how before the stream started that Venezuela ironically is closer to actually becoming a stateless society than anywhere else in the world, because they've got this gigantic counter-economic network that's built up by cryptocurrencies.
Hey guys, everyone is spamming Orange Man Bad in the chat.
I don't know how
I done?
I don't know how gigantic it is, because it still seems to be a small amount of people using it. But I mean, there is in addition to Dash Venezuela, there's a Dash Colombia group, because a lot of Venezuelans have immigrated to Colombia. And so what they want to do is get Dash and send it back to friends and family who are still living in Venezuela. So I think this next year you're going to see that grow a lot.
But in Venezuela though, it's they essentially can't survive based on the jobs that exist.
I got no inner monologue.
And DJ Arms, DJ67 is wondering why Sargon hasn't used Bitcoin yet. I think that's what's going to be the ultimate fallout from all of this Sargon and Patreon and Subscribestar stuff, is that we're going to have to set up a real solution for this using crypto. And
Yeah, that's
exact. Yeah, once you get people like Sargon and Jordan Peterson and stuff like that using crypto, that I think is going to be a big shot in the arm too. So I'm kind of excited for 2019 on the crypto side. 2018 was this bear year, but I'm actually kind of optimistic about the fact that this was a bear year. Means you've
Manny
probably
Kibit says, according to them, I don't have a bell on me, so I'm using this for the moment. Cryptocurrency is either Marxist or Nazi / alt-right.
I know, dude. That was so funny when earlier this year that guy on fucking Bloomberg tried to claim that Bitcoin, the ideas behind Bitcoin, was a Marxist theory of value. His words, not.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was when I first heard that.
Blackbeard's sitting in my bedroom.
When I first,
I think this, but I think the bear year. I'm kind of hoping that this barrier for cryptocurrencies has weeded out a lot of the people who were just in it like, yes, this is a great tool to speculate. Just get in, get rich, and do all that stuff. As opposed to the people who were like, let's make this a functioning currency and get people to use it.
Oh, but that's just mom in the other room.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is that Dave Colin recently just made a video that kind of pissed me off. It's not the video.
Okay, what triggered the fluff ball this time? I swear you're triggered by everything, including Dapperton.
But you keep cutting me off.
Yeah, I just went there.
But yeah, Dave Colin recently made a video talking about Patreon and alternatives to Patreon, which fine, whatever. I mean, the most of the video is just, we got to find an alternative to Patreon, and that's self-evident at this point. But yeah, what he says towards the end, he argues that, well, a lot of people are turning to cryptocurrencies, and countries are looking towards outlawing cryptocurrencies, so we need regulations. We can't just decentralize the market. Oh my god.
We need regulations because a tyrannical government is looking to outlaw crypto.
I mean,
he cannot be serious. I completely overlooked that.
I've recently been saying lately that I've become skeptical of the skeptics. Based on how they've been handling the Internet Bill of Rights. Specifically, it's how all of their arguments point to.
Oh, I'm that annoying dork. You know that guy who, that guy you want to punch in the face? Yeah, I'm that guy.
All right, Johnny, let him talk.
All right, go ahead. I got stuff to do anyway.
Well, crypto. Everything that they've been saying, these people, about the Internet Bill of Rights, all of their arguments point to centralization and the state being the problem. And their conclusion is always, we need more centralization through government regulations.
Yep.
So on top of that, it's been pointed out to them multiple times, the problem with that, how cryptocurrency works. And in fact, Dave specifically he's went into detail about cryptocurrency in the past extensively, so he knows how it works, he knows the selling points. So what really has made me skeptical of them is not the cognitive dissonance, it's how, it's been pointed out to them probably countless times. In fact, Sargon made a response to one of my videos indirectly. I mean, he basically covered everything that I did, and he uploaded it a day after I uploaded a direct response to him, so I interpret that as a response. But yeah, they know full well what they're talking about, and they spout ignorant nonsense like that, oh, well, I could outlaw it, so that's not viable. Well, I mean,
even though
China and Russia have already outlawed it. China has one of the largest crypto economies on Earth, and Russia has entire cities which their entire economy is based on cryptocurrency.
Yep.
So,
well, and you're
that's
starting to see a lot of this in sub-Saharan African countries as well, because you got a similar situation there. Their socialist governments have just completely crashed their money supplies. In the past, you know, when you talk to a lot of people from there, they say, yeah, they try to do as much as they can with gold, but that's very limited. It's a lot easier to get your hands on crypto.
Yeah.
right. Well, the other thing is just, especially in Dave's case, how he advertises crypto a lot. He talks about crypto and developments in crypto. He knows full well that it is a decentralized and encrypted means of exchange. The state cannot possibly monitor that. In order for the state to monitor transactions with cryptocurrency, they would need to know the wallet address, they would need to know the time that each transaction occurred at, and they would need to know the amount traded in order to try and prove that someone was trading around them. And that would just defeat the purpose of trying to monitor somebody, because you would know everything that you're trying to learn in advance. So
Yeah.
that would be the only way to actually track somebody. So you can't really track somebody, because without already knowing, it's impossible.
Well, and if they're
But-
using Dash, that's going to work up until the point where someone uses private send and it all gets mixed, and there it goes.
Like, even think about this. We need to regulate the internet because the person who will be regulating the internet might outlaw cryptocurrency.
Oh, and some of the
Think
laws.
about that.
Yeah, and some of the laws which are being passed around, promoted by these people, are absolutely disgusting. They either didn't read it or are lying deliberately to try and rally people behind it blindly. Like, there was that first one proposed back in like August, which we pointed out that would all of them propose the FCC nationalizing the internet. Which, I mean, once you know that, that's basically how you can tell this is one big problem reaction solution con. But yeah, that one in particular would have the federal government criminalize people for publishing content, that's their words, not mine, online, which they find unfair. Again, their words, not mine. So this is, I mean, if you don't see this as a power grab, the very transparent and obvious power grab that this is, then, I mean, you're either lying or you haven't read the bill.
Yep.
Well, and then you've also got this whole, you know, we need to regulate social media thing because the social media companies are too powerful. Well, what do you think that's going to do other than just give the government that same power?
Like, not to mention, these social media companies, they want these regulations because that's going to basically swipe their competition right off the board.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the board.
Yeah, you think that it's bad now, you know, it's hard to compete with them. Try making it impossible, literally impossible. Like, it couldn't happen even if you were lucky. And that's the reason they want it, because so many people are abandoning ship. And that's the reason why this year was the year that this call for regulating the internet started, because like 2 billion people have been surveyed, and they claim, was it billion or was it million? But there was a study where a lot of people basically earlier this year, you know, they claimed that they deleted a social media app off their phone. And if you look at, you know, Twitter and Facebook on the stock market, they haven't had a gain since like 2015. I mean, these are essentially corpses of corporations. They are not going to be able to, even with the monopoly set in, not necessarily monopoly, but even with everything the state has set in place for them, give it another year and a half, 2 years, they're not going to be able to sustain themselves. Everybody's just going to go to a different platform like Steam.
Like,
well, maybe not Steam it. They just had to lay off 80% of their staff.
I was giving an example, but yeah, they're going to go to different platforms.
I'd say that what should be done is like sort of an RSS feed, really simple syndication, where it's kind of like your emailed embeds that'll pop up on sort of a Twitter-like interface, where you can just get all the people. Oh,
the way BitTube is set up, and I mean, they're planning this big redesign to make it not just a video site, but more of a full social media thing, is that, you know, it's all done decentralized through blockchain technology and the what's that file system called? It's a worldwide distributed file system. IPFS, I think it is. But yeah, I mean, you can censor that. I mean, if there was something that was like copyrighted on the site or something, like they could delist it from their site, but their site is basically just a search engine for the rest of it. And if you still have the link, you can still, you know, get there and share it and everything. So, I mean, that would be fully censorship free, and you wouldn't be beholden to any advertisers because everyone's paid with cryptocurrency.
Right. But okay, so the point that I was getting to earlier is that I don't think people like Sargon, Dave Cullen, or Jordan Peterson especially are going to actually admit that crypto and decentralization is the solution, because they seem to be actively avoiding that, as we've seen earlier.
I think they're looking at the situation as it is now instead of the potential. The problem with a Patreon replacement is that you can't really do recurring payments with Bitcoin. That's just not something that's set in place yet.
No.
Well, I mean, it would be one thing if they argued that, which again, that's not a very good argument, because the crypto market's one of the fastest growing industries right now, essentially. But it's the arguments that they do make, which are just complete bullshit, and in many cases they themselves have contradicted that or shown that they know better in the past.
Yeah. But
Andy Davis in the chat asks if a progressive policy, this isn't a super chat, it's just a good question. If a progressive policy worked, would you still support it? Not if it's an initiation of force. That's the problem we have. It's the force.
Yep. Like, even if it did work, that'd be bad, because it's just going to snowball into even more policies that don't work.
It just happens that free market policies are the ones that work better. And, well, that's not really surprising. You know, just think about it even for a second. It makes complete sense that people utilizing the resources they create, they can utilize these resources more efficiently than a parasitic entity expropriating it and distributing it among hundreds of millions of different people and trying to efficiently calculate.
Well, and in the free market, if you do something that doesn't work, people are just going to stop giving you their money and give their money to someone who's doing it better.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking even from like a basic perspective. Like, you don't even need to get into the deep economics. I'm just from a logical perspective. Like, you could be a progressive or even a fascist or a Marxist, and that's something which you'd have a hard time denying, that you could handle your own resources better than a state could. You know, if you actually think about the logistics of it, one person manages resources which they created versus a small group of people trying to distribute and manage resources among hundreds of millions.
And Scorch88 is asking about a Star Trek economic system. Could you imagine if replicators actually existed, how much different society would be than what you actually see on the Next Generation?
Still not post-scarcity, though.
But it would be such a game changer. Well, I think that's the thing. It's, you know, it's a hypothetical, but realistically, since E equals MC squared, just to get that cup of Earl Grey tea, you're going to have to get like a significant energy output of a supernova or something like that in order to convert it into matter.
Yep. Like one thing that Murray just a little thing I find interesting is that one thing that Murray Rothbard pointed out is that post scarcity isn't like, oh, we have like all these resources and we're never gonna run out. No, post scarcity is like, I think I want a Coke, and then it immediately appears in your mouth. Like that's what post scarcity means.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of relative too, because I mean, if you took someone from Karl Marx's time, showed the Mars Society today, they would say, you've done it. You've got a post-scarcity society, but yet we still want things because human desires are infinite. So how are you going to have post-scarcity without an infinite amount of energy and resources?
Human desire is infinite, but resources are not. That's why we have property rights, to solve disputes between the different wants.
Not why we have property rights, but
well, I know that
property rights are more efficient.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have property rights in an efficient sense rather than a rights sense. Like, rights don't come from utilitarianism.
But yeah, were you watching the stream that Filthy Hoplu and I did the other day? I mean, you mentioned Jordan Peterson, but I mean that's just confirmed.
Well, actually, that was with Azer. I was busy.
Okay. I thought you were there, but I mentioned that I had some suspicions about people that were gaining prominence in political YouTube, for lack of a better terminology, based on how they tend to avoid the obvious, and even if they've argued for it in the past, and how all their solutions tend to be give the state more power, that I started getting a bit suspicious of them. And I'm not saying that people like Dave or Sargon are shills, but I know we know as a matter of fact now that Jordan Peterson is a shill, because he was on the UN's High Council for writing their sustainability program. You know, the
well, I mean, he's a statist. We always knew that.
No, I'm serious. If anyone who's in chat right now who thinks that's nuts, you can look it up. In 2013, he was appointed to a high security council in the UN's Sustainable Development Program, more commonly referred to as Agenda 21. You can't even make that up.
Yeesh.
I only really brought him up because he's supposed to be making that alternative to Patreon. And I'm thinking, if he doesn't use cryptocurrency, then he's going to have to use those same payment providers. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that it was really the payment providers who were the impetus behind this, and not just Patreon doing this on its own.
It's the credit card companies and the cartel of banks that are behind like all of this.
Yeah, the ones which are currently getting killed by crypto right now. Which, by the way, watch, if he doesn't have crypto processing, he's gonna create this website, and then it's the exact same thing is gonna happen, and then they're gonna be like, "We need to regulate social media. Look at this." I can guarantee you that's more or less what they're going to try and go for, because I mean they've demonstrated with Subscribestar. I mean, they know at this point that's what's going to happen.
Not to mention,
as opposed to developers who are working on market-based solutions as we speak.
That's simply it. You need market-based solutions. You need to innovate this problem of centralization and the state's ability to regulate the market in general out of existence.
Yep.
And they themselves, the premise of their argument would conclude with that, but for some reason they choose to avoid it. Genuinely, it would surprise me if it turned out that Sargon or Dave Cullen were shills for bankers or the state. But I mean, based on how they're, how they're arguing for the things that they are recently, I mean, it's got me watching them pretty closely.
Yeah. Like, another thing that is a lot of this problem was caused by the state. Like, number one, a bunch of European hate speech laws, as well as the very existence of the Atlantic Council, which Mark Zuckerberg is upon it. But the United States government likes to extort companies into doing things that they want by means of antitrust law, especially the Microsoft case. Like, hey, you know how you're not doing what we want? Well, stop that and do what we want. Otherwise, we're going to hit you with an antitrust case. Like, I bet you if that the Google management decided, actually, you know what? I think we're done with censorship. We're gonna make things right. I bet you that the day after, they'd be hit with an antitrust case.
In Microsoft's case, not doing what they wanted was simply not lobbying and giving them campaign donations and stuff like that. That was the only thing.
It's a racket. It's a protection racket.
I mean, that is.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you say
conversion.
Anytime you say, okay, I'm this business and I'm going to, do this my way, and I'm going to, not be evil, as Google used to say. I mean, if you do stuff like that long enough, then all they have to do is send the SEC in to find you in violation of 100 different rules that they just made up, and have this big scandal in the news media, and you're done for.
As the old saying goes, you raise your price, you're gouging. You lower your price, you're predatory. And if you keep your prices the same, you're fixing.
So, in other words, even more simple, if you're not a corporatist, the state will make you a corporatist, or else they'll kill your business.
Yep.
Yeah, they could conceivably do that, yeah. And we've seen examples of
it. They do that.
They want all the big companies, all the big players in the market, they want them all to be politically connected. They want them all to operate essentially exactly how the state wants them to operate.
Yep. Like, people don't realize that Silicon Valley used to be very politically neutral. This is a recent development.
Hey, Shane, do you mind if I invite Atomic?
Oh, sure. Yeah, he's always welcome.
All right.
Well,
but yeah, this year for cryptocurrency wasn't that great. I mean, this was essentially the propaganda year because of the bear market that the values at least have been in. But yeah, 2019, with what's happening with the state and how the international markets are about to collapse, and these giant counter economic networks which are going to form trading with cryptocurrency. I think not only
I have to bring up ΔASH again, because I really think this is a genius setup. They call it a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization of like thousands of masternodes just all over the world. What's the SEC going to do about that? How are they going to regulate that? How are they going to,
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch them, watch this start to become a mainstream problem for both. I mean, it's going to be something to watch CNN, MSNBC, and Fox all they're doing simultaneously is propagandizing and saying the most absurd things. I mean, they're already losing their mind.
You remember that?
Yeah, we'll get. I guess we'll mention that. I'm not done though. I mean, we saw how they handled cryptocurrency during its bull market at the end of 2017. We got things like Bitcoin is Marxist, and simultaneously Bitcoin's used by terrorists and child molesters, and that creepy guy down the street who sends shivers up your spine. I mean, it's ridiculous as
If
is.
you put the two of those together, they're saying that Marxists are terrorists and child molesters. Logically, as a result of all that.
Well, to be fair, in that case, they're not necessarily wrong. I mean, they tend to be more predisposed to both of those activities than any other political group,
or at least raping the housekeeper.
Ooh.
But yeah, if you think that's nuts, watch until the Dow and other counter-economic organizations start sprouting up. I mean, watch the day that a private crypto paid for security officer defends somebody from a police officer beating the crap out of them. Oh my God. The state's reaction to that is gonna be like, we're gonna need to record that and play that long after the state's gone, because that's gonna be just legendary.
Yeah.
Have a crypto for security forces. Why not?
Hey,
you could have something like, you could have a DAO set up where if you get a speeding ticket, you just scan the speeding ticket into your computer and send it, and then the DAO will give you the funds to cover it. Or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were gonna mention Cody Wilson.
Yeah, just the media hype around Cody Wilson and how they basically this guy just went under their nose until they found out, wait a minute, there's a crypto anarchist and he's doing something. Oh God, what do we do? And it just turned into a massive media panic.
3D printed guns, right?
Yeah, he's the guy who made 3D printed guns.
They tried to attack him, and it was really funny. They thought he was gonna. You could tell they thought he was gonna be like Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro, but no, he deliberately. Apparently, he used Jean Baudrillard's method of hyper reality, like his analysis of the media. He called it hyper reality, but essentially he utilized that to try and, present this invention. He chose a gun specifically so that the media would be as alarmist as possible about it, just so he would popularize decentralization.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not like he was the first one to do it. There are all sorts of 3D printed guns all over the Pirate Bay and GitHub and places like that.
You don't even need a 3D printer. You can just get basic machinist tools, and you can make like pipe guns. That not just pipe guns. You can make better than pipe guns.
But yeah,
you do need to be a skilled machinist in order to do that. Though with a 3D printer, you don't have to be that skilled. Although it was Patrick of Disenthral's channel, which is a channel everyone should try out. But earlier this year, he was actually trying to print out a Liberator, and I mean, the printer was just going for like 20 hours, and then it didn't work, and he had to start over. So it's not quite. It's not like the Replicator. You push a button and out pops the gun.
No.
Speaking of which, I ordered a 3D printer the other day, in case any of you are,
cool.
Oh, I know why.
Yeah, Washington State.
Some videos of it working, but please make sure to time lapse them because they are so slow.
Oh, you need to hear what he's doing.
Yeah, Washington State has a bump stock buyback program where they're buying bump stocks for $150 each. So I'm just gonna print a bunch of bump stocks and sell it back to them all year. Because
what do they go for on eBay? I mean, they're just hunks of plastic. You're gonna get one for get a whole bunch for like $20-$30 and go and sell them.
I'm just gonna print a bunch of them and then give them to the state and get $150 each, because the program goes all through next year.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna basically just do that all year and get you know, I don't even know how much money. I haven't calculated it yet, but it's going to be in like the tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
I tried looking for something like that in Nevada, but I think they've already banned bump stocks way before the federal law was passed, because you know, Vegas shooting and all that.
Yeah,
But-
contrary to popular opinion, Nevada is not this, like, you know, libertarian paradise.
No.
Yeah, like gambling and prostitution are legalized, but there's a whole lot of other statist crap going on there.
There's not, prostitution isn't even legalized in Las Vegas. That's actually a myth. But
Well, it's the rest of Nevada.
Yeah.
It's in the city limits, but as soon as you walk out of the city limits, it's legal.
But even then, pretty much all of casinos and dispensaries here are basically, if you aren't in bed with the fucking government, you are not selling anything.
Well, they're regulated by the Nevada Gaming Commission, and I think they even have to like have a membership in it and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's all statist.
Like I actually did some stuff for one of the dispensaries over here, and I found out only certain kinds of people, probably with political connections, can have stuff like advertisements on taxis and whatnot. Which basically just gives you like the entire idea about, yeah, this is what we're dealing with here. Like the reason why like states are pushing for cannabis legalization is not because, oh, we realize that this drug war is a terrible idea and prohibition never works. No, they want that. They want a cut of it.
BJ Arm 67 is bringing up the issue of how much land does the federal government own in Nevada, and I don't know what the actual figures are, but if you look like on a map of the U.S. where they've like colored in red all the land the government owns, the whole like western part of the U.S. is almost solid red.
It is. They've pretty much pillaged the land in this state, and it's getting to the point where every inch that could be developed has been developed, and it's like almost to that point.
Washington State is either just flat fields or forests, basically. So I mean, there's, in perspective, there is very little private lands here.
No.
Well, and a lot of it, Gary Johnson was talking about this when that whole what were their names? The ranchers and the federal land thing.
Yeah, that.
But he was talking about Bundy. He was talking about how it's like you got to look at how they do things. They basically make it like a chessboard where, like, you know, all the white squares will be privately owned and the government owns all the black squares. So it's impossible to own this whole area and farm it without going across a whole bunch of government land too.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy the way they did it.
It's like a chessboard, except the state tries to make it where you're always in checkmate. By default, they try and make it where you're always in checkmate.
And they get all queens, and you have all pawns and maybe a bishop.
But yeah, we're Las Vegas and Nevada. They aren't really. It's not a libertarian state. I like it here, but it's not really something I would say is the bastion of freedom in this country.
Well, at least it's not the People's Republic of North Carolina. So
exactly. Well, or hell, our neighbors to the west of us.
Oh, and God, this county that I'm in, it's like, yes, Lincoln County, the nice rural county with all the taxation of a big city without any of those pesky services getting in your way.
Oh.
So they're just taking as much as they can, and like they don't even have an explanation for it.
No, but heaven forbid if you try to build anything here.
Oh goodness!
Oh no, you! Oh God, our zoning laws here are just crazy.
But don't you know that if you don't have zoning laws, you'll end up like this one city in China?
Oh, you know how bad
it probably has zoning laws.
I live. I'm not going to specify where I live. I'll say near a major population center, and around here there are you cannot build a building which has more than 2 floors. That's how bad they are here.
Oh, goodness.
Wasn't there something like that in St. Louis? You couldn't have, at least at one point, you couldn't have any building that was higher than the arch.
Yeah, there's only freaking one building in the entire area which is more than 2 stories, and that's a couple. Well, actually, there's a few of them now that I think about it, and they're hospitals, and they're these hulking, ugly, monolithic structures which you can see wherever you're at in the city. It's like those pyramids from 1984.
Oh, what was that I was watching? It might have been one of those Stossel videos. This guy was trying to build, some apartments in San Francisco, which, of course, the rents are sky high because there's so little of it. And just years and years and years, he's been trying to convert his laundromat, so he can, build apartments there. It's already zoned for residential, but at one thing they said they wouldn't let him do it because it would cast shade on a tiny part of a neighboring schoolyard. And it's like, what?
Like, isn't like the time where recess happens in schools, like right when the sun is directly over a school and just shining right down on it?
Usually like after lunch or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So it basically doesn't matter.
But it matters because after school, when the state doesn't really control what's going on, that's what matters.
Oh, but the crazy thing was were all these people showing up at the meetings saying like, well, he shouldn't be allowed to do this because housing's expensive enough around here as it is. And it's like, do you not know economics? And then they would say he should be forced to create, 100% free housing. It's like, then what incentive would he have to do it?
Oh, don't forget how when people do like create free housing, like the one guy who made sort of boxcar houses, like you remember him. He basically made a bunch of like mobile homes made of wood, just something that the homeless population can stay in, so that they aren't living in tents or on benches.
I remember someone doing that with discarded shipping containers.
Well, I'm talking about like sort of one's made of wood. Like I can't remember what his name was, but it happened in like San Francisco or no, Los Angeles. And the city decided, no, we're gonna forcefully take these and destroy them. Like, oh my goodness.
And what happens to the people who were living there?
Exactly.
Yeah, I couldn't overkill that any harder from the sound of it.
Yeah, but there's like, I mean, look at these online. People have taken discarded shipping containers, and in some cases, they put a lot of money into it and turned them into really nice homes. But like, there was this one guy who was doing it over in England where, again, there's a housing shortage and especially shortage of cheap housing. And he was trying to do, and I mean, I don't know if it was the Parliament or the local council or whatever, but they just came down on him and he wasn't able to do it.
Yep. Like a lot of just that here. The thing about like leftist socialistic people's republics, what they don't understand is that a lot of their policies hurt the middle class and even the lower class. And the worst part about it is that the people are inevitably going to move away, and they're going to bring their voting habits to everywhere else.
You think they don't know that?
I do know
that. Maybe some of the useful idiots don't, but all the politicians.
They know it.
They know that.
Oh, they know it.
Only 100 years ago, they were advertising the exact same things for the exact opposite reasons. They know the politicians now know full well.
Well, and a lot of them were eugenicists, and they were doing this to try to keep black people from getting housing.
Yep. Minimum wage laws.
Trying to keep black people from getting jobs.
Yep. Like a lot of the, not like a lot of the, there are the one thing that I'm sorry, Freddie Roosevelt said that is actually not wrong is that there is no coincidence in politics.
Yeah, that's true, but yeah, you hear all the progressives talk about, oh, rich people just want everything for themselves. Well, no, like the one argument which you could make aside from policy is, oh, well, the intentions of people like Woodrow Wilson were good. No, they weren't.
No, they weren't.
They wanted to kill off basically everybody who wasn't a corporatist or a politician. The progressive movement literally wants to kill everybody and make the world for a small handful of elite families. That's what they want.
And keep in mind, when they were talking about the white race 100 years ago, when the progressive movement was getting going, they weren't even talking about whites the way we think of it. They were specifically meaning Nordic whites.
Nordic Anglos, yeah.
Yeah. So no Irish need apply, no Germans, Italians, Spanish, anyone like that.
Reminds me of freaking 4chan. Watching them talk about race and specifically other European groups.
To be fair, those memes are damn hilarious. Like especially the ones about Anglos.
Yeah, the the Nordic ones. There's one that I saw somebody post in my server, I think it was, where I first saw it, where basically somebody made a meme attacking Nordic Europeans for their racial characteristics, and like from a race realist perspective, apparently Nordics are less white than like someone from the UK, apparently.
I don't know. I still haven't really figured out with Nazi Germany, because their superior race wasn't the white race, it was the Aryan race, which is a subset, but I can't really figure out exactly what's supposed to be included in that. They weren't very clear on that.
No. But yeah. A lot of the like.
But anyway, as for things that happened in 2018, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just her, she should get a mention.
2 more years of prime material for Idiot Extraordinaire. I'm looking forward to it.
You bet.
Yeah, sorry for anybody who wants to see me make more videos. I'm getting back to it really soon here. It's just I've been writing the Anarchist Checkbook, which is what I'm calling my guide to counter economics. And I basically, a couple of days ago, I had to go back and rewrite my script because I realized essentially something which I don't know if like it's a very common observation, but after looking through all the tax codes and finding all the tax loopholes, after I found a few hundred of them, I noticed that they're all basically the exact same thing, and it comes from the exact same problem. Like the state has a problem with how it writes its tax codes, and that's it assumes essentially that everybody directly owns the money and the property which is theirs, like they possess it when they're audited and when they pay their taxes. So essentially, if you could find a way to make your property in an exempt status, or if you find, like an outlet, an investment, or some sort of scheme you can put all of your money in, all your savings, you won't have to pay any taxes. And that's essentially how all the legal loopholes work. They have different names and they apply to different fields, but they're the exact same thing in principle, all of them. So
the problem is, I mean, we've heard this kind of thing for decades. If you just do this thing and, you know, say these magic words in court, you won't have to pay taxes. What we don't really see is it working, unless you're like a rich crony of a politician. If you're just, you know, an ordinary Joe, you don't really see any examples of it actually working. And even if there were something like that, again, the IRS would just make up a regulation, put it in the Federal Register, and get you on it.
Yep.
Well, okay. Well, my point was simply that I've decided that my script is going to focus more on credits and strategies for trading around the state than tax loopholes. But I am going to mention essentially what I just mentioned now in my video in regards to tax loopholes. So the good news is the video is probably not going to be an hour and a half like I originally thought. It's probably going to be more like a half hour now, but
basically the opposite problem of me.
oh yeah, that stuff that I added to the script that we're collaborating on.
Oh no, don't worry. I'm not gonna do it's not gonna take that long. I'm not gonna do like a super cartoon. But trust me, it shouldn't take.
Cap Hoplite says that Aryans were blonde, blue-eyed Germans. Hitler wasn't blonde and blue-eyed, so he wouldn't have.
He wasn't even a German.
Yeah, no, he was he Austrian?
Yeah, he was Austrian.
Austrian, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, he wouldn't have qualified under that narrow reading, but I think they just left it vague so that they could include who they want and exclude who they want.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's pretty much the purpose of eugenics.
Yep. Right. Also, I love the German miracle myth. Like, yeah, like apparently, like how the Nazis apparently saved the German economy, and because of that, we should do the same here. Even though in reality,
if anything, the only reason why the Nazis didn't ruin the economy, it was pretty much already ruined. But
yeah, they
weren't going to last much longer. I mean, even without the war, they weren't going to last another 10 years.
Like, here's the thing: the Nazis were either people like to say, oh, the Nazis were some third position, but in reality, all the Nazis were, and fascism in general, is either the FDR's policy, which didn't work, or the Soviets' policy, which didn't work.
It was actually the Soviets' policy.
Like, it wasn't the case of Nazi Germany. But like,
remember that guy that you linked?
Super chat, everyone. Super chat from Genu, $20 US. Thanks for the content, Shane. Happy Voluntarist New Year. Thank you so much, Genu, and I hope you have a great New Year too. All right, that's what you're saying.
But yeah, you remember that tweet? I don't know if it was you, but somebody linked a tweet where some Nazi argued that Nazi Germany, nobody had to pay taxes in Nazi Germany. And then
oh wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
But yeah, somebody retweeted that and said how to turn an ANCAP to a Nazi in 5 minutes, but no. And then they elaborated, and they said, oh well, they had a bunch of public works programs where the state harvested all the resources and then relocated it elsewhere in the economy, and that's how the Nazi economy functioned. Oh well. So that's just a really bullshit way of saying that the state managed the economy then.
Yep. Like, the only reason why the economy did, like, anything but bad in Nazi Germany is because they decided, you know what, I think it's time to throw out the mark and not do this kind of inflationary policy, which they did. They actually backed their currency with not debt, but labor, which is a terrible idea, but is not as terrible as debt. But they
were the National Socialist German Labor Party.
Yeah, but it's more of how monetary policy works rather than how, oh well, if we just have an all-white nation, then things will magically do well. Like, Jesus Christ. Like I'm kind of in the sort of state of mind where I feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole with like different status groups. One day I feel like I'm those damned commies and their redness, I hate them. Then the next day I'm like, the fascies and protectotards are at it again. And then
the funny part is when you eventually realize they're all the same thing.
Oh, I know they're the same thing. I just like to handle them in different ways, because well, not entirely different ways, but in different shit. I'm trying to articulate how I want to put this, like, sort of in a different tone, if you will. Like they all have, like I think that the horseshoe theory is, well, it's kind of dumb, but it has the right idea, but it's a very terrible execution of it. Like the problem with a lot of these groups is ultimately central planning.
The problem with the horseshoe theory is, not that all the groups are exactly the same, with the exception of anarchism, of course, but it's the idea that that you can find a freedom, you can find a balance.
Yeah.
You can obtain freedom by balancing two ends of totalitarianism. What? That doesn't make any sense.
Not to mention, like, a lot of the problem with like centrists is that if you are a centrist and you're in the sort of well, I don't think this country should move to the left or the right, all that means is that you need to keep the country the exact same way as it was on the day that you declared yourself to be a centrist. That's what it ultimately boils down to.
But I mean, it's like, which way are you centrist? I mean, that just means you have, some qualities of one side and some qualities of the other. But I mean, there might be a whole bunch of different combinations of that. So
yeah.
I don't really see how centrist has all that much meaning, as an identifier.
Well,
because it doesn't.
How it's currently used, yeah, that's essentially it's a meaningless term. But how the term originated, if you look at it like that, which was essentially utilizing policies and a political stance based on pragmatism. I mean, okay, so it's essentially utilitarianism, but applied to the states. It's really dumb because the deciding factor of any society is how its economy is managed, essentially, or lack thereof.
Pragmatism is high time preference in disguise.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, seriously. What?
Or lack of economic management, but yeah, that's essentially what determines, what materials are available. Government policy is only a hindrance to that. And I think if people realize that, then I think that you'd have a lot less people like Pauladice. You seen that guy, Shane? Pauladice?
Oh, goodness.
Who is this?
There's a user who created his channel like a month ago. His name is Pauladice, Polidice, and oh my god, you're gonna have a field day with him.
He made it. I actually see in my recommendations that I think he made it big with a video responding to PragerU, like their nationalism video. And I'm not gonna say PragerU is anything other than a quite simply a neocon organization, but at the same time.
NCAP Hoplite has a good question. Wasn't Atomic going to join in on this chat? Esso, didn't you send him the
I
link
sent
to join?
him 2 invites, and he told me both times that they didn't work.
If you'll excuse me, I gotta go spend New Year's alone as a single man. God,
take care.
Movement.
I just copied the link and sent it to him, so I mean, I don't know why he's not able to join, but yeah, I did try and invite him. But anyway, I see.
That's the one I just put in there in the group chat that only we can see. But yeah, make sure that's the one you gave to him.
That's the one. I sent to him twice, and both times it didn't
Weird.
work.
I mean, that's
But,
the same link y'all used to join, right?
Yeah, that's what I used to join.
But yeah, I made a response to him. I don't know if you saw that, Shane, but that guy who was trying to argue that price gouging was a thing, quote unquote, and he tried to make his point for price gouging being real by pointing to art galleries. Quite possibly the best example of art of value being subjective that exists.
Yep. Like, oh, we're all gonna die if we don't get this single painting that's overpriced because it's a single painting and because of the fact that people want it because it's a single painting.
But yeah,
well, and it's just there's a lot of crap on it. I mean, artists just like slather whatever on the campus, and they got to be giggling to themselves as people like pretend to understand what's going on. It's an emperor wears no clothes kind of thing. It's like they can't admit that they don't see anything in that painting because, oh, well, then you're not one of the proper people who can, understand all of this. There was a great Murphy Brown episode about that.
But yeah, he recently just made a video on, he was trying to argue for blue states being more economically powerful than red states. And he tried to argue that, like in the title, I haven't watched the whole video, but in the title, he claims that Detroit is an economic powerhouse. And he tried to argue that California is the most prosperous state in the U.S. because it has a high GDP.
The only reason why California is prosperous is because of things like Silicon Valley.
It's not.
It's not prosperous. It's only prosperous in numbers. It's only Hollywood and Silicon Valley that's doing it.
There's no actual prosperity. The economy is not growing in California. No. A high GDP just means there's a high amount of government program.
Yeah, exactly.
Because government spending, remember,
there was a time during the 70s where the USSR had a higher GDP per capita than the US, but that doesn't mean their economy was growing. That just means people were digging holes and burying them again.
Well, in that case, they were probably just lying because they did that. But you got to remember, government spending is a component of GDP. So if government creates $1 trillion and spends it in the economy, to go, woohoo, look, GDP went up by $1 trillion. Oh, yeah, okay, great, wonderful.
Yeah, there's no actual economic activity occurring, so there's no actual market growth. GDP is quite literally just a worthless figure.
Simon Kuznets is the one who came up with it, and he actually said, well, A, don't use it as a measure of economic prosperity, but second, don't include government spending. And of course, they do both of those.
Yep.
And he's the guy who created the metric, was saying this.
But yeah, he made that video, and I would respond to it myself, but I'm still finishing up that project, that video I'm making. So, I mean, if you want to crack at it, you should definitely try. But Polodice is notable. Other than being a complete retard, he has this absolutely unbearably smug tone in his voice while he says these ridiculously stupid things, and I don't know about you, but that shit makes my skin crawl.
Why is it that the really dumb, ignorant people have that smug tone about them?
The Dunning-Kruger effect. The least competent people are the most sure of themselves.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you knew that, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, it doesn't make it any less infuriating.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, God, the worst was this one girl that I had Lord Killian go after. I think I called it protecting women from stupid, but she had on 50 layers of makeup, and everything was just like this smug thing with this kind of sigh after every sentence. It's like, oh my God.
Like, why do you do this to us? Why do you torment us this way with your smug... Like, oh my goodness.
Oman Rose says that his econ textbook mentioned something called monopolistic competition.
Oh yeah, he linked a picture of that in my server like a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's something that's been going on ever since I made that video about what they're teaching in public schools. People are linking their textbooks, and I've encouraged it because Atomic told me something. I think he mentioned it on one of your streams, and maybe it was a Cool Capitalist Kids stream, but that they'll start talking and they'll just start spewing absolute crap, and they'll have a teacher's aide walk around the classroom and try and look for people holding up cell phones because they don't want people recording and they don't want what they're telling people getting out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was telling us about some of that, yeah. Eric says, I'd love to hear what Shane has to say about monopolistic competition. I don't know, same thing I'd have to say about dry water, I guess.
All mainstream economics are is a bunch of contradictory graphs and equations and formulas all stuffed into a big tome of a textbook.
Yeah, Keynesianism.
Well, it's interesting. If the further away you get from, political and, government funded and supported economics, if you go into like the academic journals that are a lot more independent or, run through some kind of private force or whatever, then, I mean, it's not exactly like they're Austrian, so there's still some bogosity there, but it is amazing how different they are from like the textbooks, because they will say, well, yeah, of course minimum wage destroys jobs. Don't be stupid,
Yeah.
Just also, and people are acting like, well, it's only the Austrians that say that. No, it's pretty much all of economics except for the Keynesians.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the only views you'll find in college are, at this point, the monetarists or the Keynesians. So you've got the state, basically the monetarists are the state-approved Austrians. And
probably not even the Chicago monetarists, who are probably the more like Austrians, but the more general monetarists like Ben Bernanke.
Exactly, Bernanke.
Or you've got Keynesians who are just, at this point, to be a Keynesian, you have to just be completely divorced from reality, or you have to not know what you're talking about.
They really are the creationism of economics. I mean, it's just all the same kind of stuff that I used to debunk with creationists, and I stopped because they weren't saying anything new, and the Keynesians are doing it, and now I'm getting bored with that, so I gotta find something else, I guess.
I should probably talk about Keynesians more, because I haven't gone on with them quite enough.
I'm planning on using this year to basically go on a crusade against banking. Like,
Owen Rose also says my econ teacher tried to argue for regulation of the medical market by using the high prices of EpiPens. Look through, I think it was on the Bogosity podcast, look through the archives there. We covered something like that about how someone was trying to make a generic of an EpiPen, because technically the patents have run out, but they still just ran into all sorts of legal roadblocks trying to do so.
Yeah, this year, I don't know what I'm going to be doing this year. Probably, I mean, I'd have to know what people want to see more of, essentially. I enjoy doing what I do. I mean, these last few months, I find myself talking more about skeptics and conservatives more than I do socialists at this point, because I've been fed up with their bullshit. I don't know what's more annoying, the people who are just openly retarded, or the controlled opposition trying to lead people back to the state. That's why I don't like the conservatives so much. The people like Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro. But yeah, I mean, more people clearly resonate. I mean, I got most of my subscribers back after that video on the borderline shooting, so I think I'm going to make more videos. Not necessarily like that, but like conspiracy stuff. But I'm definitely gonna start making more conspiracy stuff along with you know, criticisms of socialism. I'm gonna go back to that. I
Yeah.
actually I was gonna do a top 10 reasons why Marxist economics is not only doesn't work but contradicts itself. And
I think I might have Lord Killian start looking for more people on the right to go after. Like I said, I think I've done Tucker Carlson and a couple of PragerUs, and because like I said, I think I'm just getting burned out having him, you know, because I mean the left has just been so full of it lately, but it's just kind of
no, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to call those people out. It's really important because that's essentially the purpose of Tucker Carlson. They're seeing that more and more people are becoming disenfranchised, so they're painting themselves as controlled opposition while the state has all these crazy progressive actors come forward like Cortez and act like complete bumbling idiots. And then people like Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro say, "Whoa, look at us. We're so reasonable. You need us to combat them." And we say you need our statist policies.
This is the exact same crap that happened with the sort of, ANCAPs and libertarians need to ally with the alt-right to destroy the left, like I mentioned in my video on anarcho-coalitionism.
Thank you.
Like, I remember that. Maybe I remember that to the T. It turned out terrible. Like our anarcho-capitalism subreddit is still to this day just plagued with alt-right spammers. Like, it's obviously nowhere near as bad as it used to be, like in 2017.
It is nice to see though that more of the ANCAPs are going like at least from what I've noticed, like I've been looking around and yeah, a lot more. There's a lot more agorists than there are Hoppians nowadays. I'm sure that's more. I'm sure like Jeff Berwick and Larkin Rose take more credit, but I'm glad to say at least that I was one of the first ones coming at a voluntarist society from the Boston anarchist perspective.
Well, yeah. Like, I'm also gonna, like, I know I've done a video on like anarcho-coalitionism, but I think I'm gonna make a video on like political coalitions in general. Like, I'm not denying that, say, it's good for getting like a specific policy pushed, like short-term goals, but for the long haul, it's a terrible thing. Like, especially when if it's a campaign like, oh, we're gonna destroy the left together. Like, that's impossible to do
with people who are basically just the left.
Exactly. They're central planners. They're central planners that want to central plan the social and the economic aspects of society.
Yeah, make no mistake. The both sides of the left-right psyop are exactly the same. And if you try and ally with one of them to take down the other, one's gonna stab you in the back, and then the other is gonna join him. So, if you're an ANCAP, don't even. You need to stay away from the political system and stick to the counter economics.
Yeah, Manny K-Belt says, yeah, it's a result of the alt-right ANCAP alliance. That guy, T and Stefan Molyneux went full statist. Yeah, that seems to be how it goes. The libertarians become more statists. The alt-right people don't become more libertarian.
And then I see the opposite problem happening, where people are saying, oh, let's align themselves with the commies, like the ANCOMs, to destroy the alt-right. Have you not learned anything? I just absolutely despise the idea of like coalitions. Like, I'm gonna say it right here. I don't mind it if it's like, say, with minarchists, because really the only difference between us is about 6 months. But Like, it's just you can't do it with like someone who is against like the core principles of libertarianism, and you can't pretend that, oh well, the alt-right, they believe in property rights. No, they don't. They don't believe in property rights. They don't. But they believe they have their own goals, and they want the state to deny your property rights to achieve it.
DJ Arm 67 says, the honest truth is that the comments you're currently reading just lied to you. Yeah, I don't believe that. Don't think too hard about that. You might hurt yourself.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's nice to see more agorists, because yeah, I think people are just simply, they're seeing the problem that the libertarian to alt-right so-called pipeline created, and yeah, they're also seeing that the centralization that the alt-right wants, that's gonna create some problems. That's also antithetical. Well, of course, it's antithetical to libertarianism. I mean, that's self-evident from the start. But yeah, it's not going to create in the short term. It's not actually even possible to work with that. Like, even if it feasibly did work, it's even if it feasibly like didn't lead to the alt-righters stabbing the libertarians in the back, it's not going to work. It's not practical.
I don't even think it's about stabbing anyone in the back. I think it's about digesting them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the reason why. I guarantee you that's at least partially correct. They want libertarians to get led back into the political system.
Like, I actually see people on like my Twitter that are like alt-right types that are actually kind of pissed off that libertarians aren't aligning themselves with them anymore.
Cats are flying free, but MM makes the point I was making a minute ago. Shane should start making videos and more topics, getting really bored of Reich. So am I, MM. So am I. Pumpkin Rose says, did you see that Tanner went bonkers? I don't know who Tanner is supposed to be.
Oh, goodness.
He's that ANCAP who went mutualist, who went ANCAP after, talking with people in my Discord server again, who then went Hoppian, and from Hans Hermann Hoppe, he's now identifying as an ethno-nationalist.
And isn't his girlfriend or whatever a Ann Prim?
I think so, yeah.
This is the weird thing I see, though. I see this progression where, libertarians become bordertarians and then they become ethnostatists. It's like, that's weird.
Yep.
Aside from the contradictory nature with Hans Hermann Hoppe's writing and actual principled voluntarism, that's the other reason why I suggest people should be incredibly skeptical of Hans Hermann Hoppe, and that's because I have seen that happen too many times, where they go Hoppian and then like a month later they announce that they're ethno-nationalists. Hoppe is like basically the gate, like the entrance to the libertarian to alt-right pipeline.
Yeah, I don't like Hoppe.
I actually kind of like some of his works. I'm gonna admit I've been listening to a lot of his like talks recently, and and even then I have to say, all right, old man, your diplomacy is just stupid. Like he's like really on the libertarians need to align themselves with the alt-right kinds of thing. Like it's one of those. Yeah, we've tried that. It didn't work.
Well, it's oh god, what was I going to say? You were talking about you can always say about someone that, okay, I like some of what he says because I don't know of anyone I disagree with absolutely 100%, just like I don't know of anyone I agree with absolutely 100%. But at least with Murray Rothbard, I don't have to do all this like, okay, some of the stuff I agree with. It's more like some of the stuff I disagree with, and that's the exception.
Yeah.
But that's why I'd rather stick with like someone like Rothbard.
Yeah, I'd say that I'd say that Hopper really aces economics with like flying colors, but his strategies are a bit wonky.
I'd rather, well, like I've said twice now, I actually have some problems with Rothbard too. Once he start getting into the fact he didn't believe in jury nullification, it seems that his view on what a contract was in a voluntarist society seems flawed. And I think out of all the anarchist philosophers, just honestly, I think that the best two when it came to property rights were Lysander Spooner and Benjamin Tucker. Speaking of which, I got a Benjamin Tucker shirt in the mail today, and I'm wearing it right now.
Nice.
Awesome.
But I'll admit I'm a big fanboy of like the Mises Circle, if you know what I mean. Like I've just been I like to listen to a lot of their talks while I do like drawing and animation.
Yeah, Lysander Spooner was awesome. I've been downloading a lot of his books and going through them because they keep finding like new things that he's written that they thought was lost, and it turns out it was serialized in this one newspaper.
Yeah, his works on economics that came out just like 2 months ago now, that was incredible. Like I think if that had actually not been lost, I think we'd actually be living in a stateless society right now. Because he was essentially Konkin 100 years before Konkin was born, and that's something that a lot of people didn't necessarily know before. He argued specifically in those books that the way to defeat the state was through competition, and that banks should form in competition with the state, create their own ledgers. I mean, he wasn't describing encryption by any means, but he was describing the same methodology by which Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is going to lead to problems for the state. He was describing the exact same thing, but with what they would have had in the 1870s.
Yeah.
And I think
Bicky says, even if the police are funded voluntarily, you still wouldn't have freedom of association. Yeah, because even if they're not paid through forced taxation, if they can still burst into your home on a mistaken drug raid and shoot the dog, that's not really an improvement.
Yeah, that's like a lot of the problem with like. It's why I think taxes can't be voluntary. Like, obviously, taxes can't be voluntary by the very definition of tax, but a lot of, like, say, the objectivist kinds of things where, you pay for the state as you go still doesn't account for the fact that it's still a monopoly on violence.
Well,
the thing is to create an alternative, like, an alternative currency, or, that one video Dapperton's used in a few of his videos where it talks about this one community that said, okay, the police aren't going to do crap. We're going to hire our own police. We got more policemen, more police cars for a lot cheaper. And, they're doing a much better job. So, it's about having the choice, the alternative. And I mean, even if you just look at things like charter schools, which are like this tiny little baby step towards actual school choice, and leftists lose their shit about them. It's like, what are you so afraid of?
Like, what's wrong?
Firstly, the idea of voluntary taxation is an absurdity because by necessity, the state requires the forceful appropriation of resources. It doesn't produce anything on its own. It doesn't have the ability to produce anything. And all it has is the ability to legislate force into being legitimate. So it will, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that it necessitates force to exist, then it will eventually become forceful, because on top of the fact that doesn't actually have any resources to start with. States, by economic necessity, have to expand themselves as the market becomes larger to try and maintain their monopoly on credit. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice idea in like not even on paper, but I guess just the sound of it is nice. But I mean, when you start thinking about the practical aspect of voluntary taxation from even a basic level, that you run into some problems to where that just simply can't happen. But yeah, that's the problem with minarchists, is they don't necessarily seem to understand that competition is the lack of competition is the main problem with the services being provided by the state, and that's something that Hoppe doesn't seem to realize either. And I even though I wouldn't necessarily consider Rothbard one of my favorites, but that's something that Rothbard and the Boston anarchists realized, was that competition was the way to abolish the state, and competition is what makes free association better than under a state society.
Competition is what kills the state and makes sure the state stays dead.
Exactly. Now, I mean, there are issues where Rothbard fumbles with this, but that's why I prefer the Boston anarchists, is because they're 100% consistent with that. I mean, you could argue that Spooner wasn't, because he kind of bit into the whole intellectual property crap,
Yeah.
but he didn't view it like these organizations have a right to not have competition. He viewed it like it was actually a form of property. So
yeah, but I mean, considering this was like the middle of the 19th century, I think we can cut him some slack on that.
yeah, well, I mean, I do cut him.
We're standing on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
that's why we see further.
Even with that, he's still like he has a couple of areas where it's not where it's not really easy to agree with him on, or you just can't agree with him on, like cost theory of value. But I mean,
well, I kind of have a problem when he goes on about how, important it is, to be moral and not be hedonistic. And it's like, well, let people have fun. What's the matter?
Well, even then, he's not saying that you can't be hedonistic. In fact, he wrote an entire book about that, Vices Are Not Crimes. But yeah, he was very socially conservative in his views.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being socially conservative if you're not like forcing it on anyone else. Like it's one of those freedom of association things.
And he didn't think that anybody else should be forced to be socially conservative. He just thought that people shouldn't be hedonistic and that people should have socially conservative values.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's what makes him, I think, all the more admirable, is that he didn't, from that, like he understands that you can't just outlaw vices. It's something that Hoppians don't seem to be able to wrap their minds around. That if you don't like something, you don't have the right to outlaw it, which is, I think that's a very profound idea. A lot of people have a hard time with that, and that's something that Spooner was able to grasp, and that's probably one of the main reasons why he's my favorite philosopher of all time.
Pumpkin Row is asking about the debates on Dapperton's channel, if there are any planned for me in the future. Not right now. I kind of dropped out over the holidays, but I'll be getting back into it. A lot of it depends on what topics are being covered. Like, he wanted to do the war on Christmas, and I don't really have a strong opinion on that one way or another, but someone was He was wanting someone to debate Sinatra on that, and so I'll get back into it. But a lot of it depends on what the topic is and what other people are already kind of wanting to do it. So it's just kind of an informal thing.
Yeah, I was actually gonna join like the debate you did on like anarcho-capitalism in general, but I was a bit busy making Dapperton's outro, and I asked if I could join another debate, but the debate that was it was on abortion, and I have really not much to say about it.
Yeah, Dapperton wanted me to be on Shane's side on abortion, and that is an issue that I have a stance on. It's just I'm not, I don't really agree that abortion is like libertarian. So
yeah, I kind of don't either, but I'm just hoping that one day it'll be a debate on like say trade or invest or monetary policy, stuff that I'm interested in.
Oh, a debate on free trade would be great.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things. I actually asked him, hey, you want to do or host a debate on trade? Because there's plenty of people who would be willing to do it, and it's one of those things, yeah. But all right, I'm gonna probably have to go get ready for my live stream, which is gonna be in like 15 minutes. For everyone who didn't hear, I'm doing a look back live stream where I go back and rewatch all of my video. Well, not all of my videos, but a lot of my videos. Some of which I have privatized, so you won't see them unless you watch the live stream. Yeah, doing it in fifth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a bunch of people will see you in 15. Yeah, it takes about 15 minutes to get kind of everything set up and.
Yeah, I'm just gonna I actually have it all in the background. I'm just gonna like go to the bathroom real quick.
TMI.
Oh. That's not that bad, but anyways, I will I'm gonna if Shane can like put it in say the description or link it in the chat.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me send it to you on Discord.
Why don't you go ahead and pop it in the chat, or do you not have the chat window open?
Oh, wait, yes, I did actually. Ha, I forgot.
Okay, yeah, just pop it in yourself.
Yeah, but my channel.
If you're gonna head out, Eso, can we get anyone else in here?
Yeah, I can try sending the Hangout link to Filthy really quick.
Okay.
Yeah. But there it is. All right. Oops.
Send one to Travis as well.
See.
Gonna make this a room full of a bunch of furries, basically.
Are you talking about Travis Retriever?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's been a while since he's been on.
Where is it? There it is. All right.
He should have it in the Discord.
I posted the link to my stream in the chat, and I hope that I will see you all there. But thank you very much for having me on, Shane. I had a great time.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, 13 minutes away from Hoplu's amazing New Year's Eve chat. So
yep,
we'll get everyone over there as soon as we're done here.
Thank you. See you then.
See ya.
See ya. But yeah, hey Shane, do you have any predictions for 2019 specifically? Like what you think will be the underlying narrative for the media or anything like that?
I don't really know, and people know how I am about predictions.
Okay.
As someone said, predictions really difficult, especially about the future. But there are things I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to be looking at these Patreon replacements, and particularly the ones that are able to leverage crypto. And also the two cryptocurrencies I'm going to be looking at are Dash and BitTube, because I think Dash is in a position more than any of them to revolutionize payment processing, especially in brick and mortar stores where, you want that, the transaction costs are like a 20th of a cent and they happen in 2 or 3 seconds. So that's kind of thing you want there. And BitTube, I think, has the potential to not only change how social media works with advertising and everything else, but their airtime extension that's kind of in beta right now. So it's not working great, but it's still fun. But once it gets going, it looks like it's going to be really good. You can use that to monetize any website. And the cool thing about it is not only do both the website owner and the visitor make cryptocurrency. Hey, Filthy. If the website owner hasn't signed up yet for BitTube, that automatically just goes into a wallet that's created for him. And as soon as he signs up, he gets it. So I think that's an amazing idea. I don't really know how well it's going to work, but it looks like it's pretty amazing. I'm going to be looking at that.
No,
But
you're talking about FNet?
No, he's talking about
I'm talking about BitTube.
Yeah. Oh. And their payment processing system. But yeah, we're doing a sort of similar thing with FNet. But what I was going to say is my prediction for 2019 is I've been noticing this sort of trend in the media, and James Corbett recently pointed this out. But I've been seeing like they've been making this very bizarre attempts to try and humanize robots, like Alexa or Google. Like, have you noticed that?
I've been seeing some.
Yeah, it's not just humanize them, but like argue that they have rights and that you can't talk to them in a certain way. You can't, actually treat them as property, even though, well, they are property. They don't have agency, so they're property.
Well, how do you know they don't have agency? Have you tested it yourself?
It's really an open question because people always talk about the Turing test, but they're saying nowadays that the Turing test really wouldn't be the proper test for agency. So they're really working on it. This is still an open question. How do you really tell if an AI is properly sapient?
Well, I think it would essentially just have to be an unlimited amount of processing power, and that's what I was talking about before we started streaming with blockchain encrypted whole brain emulation. When I was talking about that, because if it has a limited amount of processing power, if any sort of program does, that means it's necessarily the amount of memory it can have and the amount of things it can do is necessarily limited.
Well, our brains are limited. We don't have infinite processing power or infinite memory.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. People talk about it all the time, just like, people only use 10% of their brains, even though that's not true at all. When in fact, most people are using 100% of their brains all the time. But if we're using 100%, that means that.
We develop new neurons all the time, and each neuron has an infinite number of possibilities for how it can develop and what can become of it.
Well, we're not developing new neurons. We're developing new neuron pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the pathways that are important. But yeah, the only people who are only using 10% of their brains are in a coma. That's basically, but it's interesting how
socialists.
Well, that's true too. But it's interesting how if you look at like an EKG or an fMRI or something that shows you the blood flow to the different parts of the brain, like if you concentrate on a math problem, generally you'll have kind of just activation all over. The activation at, this one part of the brain, the parietal, whatever it is, I think. I don't know all the different parts of the brain that well, but you'll see a huge amount of activation there, and other parts of your brain will actually deactivate in order to give that one part the most processing power. And that's going on in your brain all the time. It's constantly making new pathways, tearing down old pathways. It's completely different to the way our computers work.
Right. Well, it's relatively easy to see what biological life has sapience and agency and which ones don't, and you can actually demonstrate this by looking at brain analysis of different species and see, we can demonstrate that ants are different than humans, for instance, and we know exactly how ants work. But yeah, with robots, I suppose it is a bit more complicated, but it does have to do with processing power, for sure.
Well, because from what I keep hearing from the AI people, they seem to really be more hopeful, instead of our regular computers, the setups, hardware, software, of doing it with neural networks, to actually set it up where, it can learn and adapt and create its own pathways and tear down its own pathways, just like our brain does. Instead of hardware or software, they call it wetware, because it's fluid and it can change like that.
Isn't it interesting how, as technology advances, it more closely resembles organic structures?
And that's something I was just thinking about the other day. Why all of these new technological designs imitate like the idea of an android, for example. And I mean, like, why specifically they're designed to have like an anthropomorphic looking husk. The fact is, that's not a very, efficient design, especially for what their purpose is. So I think, in a sense, that's sort of reality and innovations imitating fiction, because the idea of a robot first emerged during like the 1890s, I think, and that's how they were described. So I think I think a large part of modern robotics are being inspired by fiction, which is not necessarily helpful for actually creating new practical innovations. But
that's the thing. I think the market push isn't for a generalized human-like AI, and the only people looking at that are just kind of doing it, academically. But the push is for more specialized AI, like a Roomba or something like that. It's really good at figuring out how to vacuum your floor, but it can't do the dishes or whatever. We're not looking for general purpose machines like basically what us humans evolved to be. We want specific machines for specific purposes, and the AI is going in that direction.
And that's more or less what I'm thinking, is if you want a practical robot design or machine, get a Roomba. But I mean, if you're looking at it from how it seems most of these labs are looking at it, you would get something like the robot made from the Jetsons to vacuum your floor, and that is just not practical at all.
Well, I mean, that's why people get Roombas and not the robot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be vastly more expensive, so in a way, the market is going to solve this problem.
No,
yeah, but it's like if you took a Roomba back in the 50s and showed the people who were working on AI back then, they'd probably say, hey, you've done it, you've cracked it, because that was everything they wanted to do. And that's like what I was saying earlier, the problem with the Turing test is that you could make an AI specifically to pass the Turing test, but it wouldn't really be able to do anything else. So how do you actually test for a generalized sapient intelligence?
Well, what do you mean, like, able to pass the Turing test? It would be able to pass a...
Well,
like,
the Turing test... The Turing test is basically you have a chat room.
I know what the Turing test is, but I wanted to know what you meant by that. Like, it would have a series of pre-programmed responses. Well, that's not what the Turing test what the Turing test measures. It measures the machine in question's ability to calculate new independent responses. So if you created a machine which was designed to answer a few specific questions, it wouldn't really be an AI which is passing the Turing test. That would just be a determined response.
Well, no, that's what they did like back in the 70s with Eliza, and it did fool some people, but really the Turing test is, can you fool a human? Can the human tell the difference between the two chat members, one being an AI and one being a person? But you could make an AI that learns about languages and responses, and kind of like, what was that one IBM computer that beat everyone else to Jeopardy?
Watson.
Watson, yeah. That's kind of a more, like what I'm saying, it's a specialized thing. It's made for that one task, So, I mean, how do you develop a test that, I mean, it's the same problem we have in schools. You have these standardized tests, but what happens? The teachers just teach the test. Well, how do you know that has to happen with the AI? You're making an AI specifically to pass this test,
Well, again, that's not really artificial intelligence. That's not really artificial intelligence. That's just programming it with one determined response.
I'm still talking about AI. I'm just talking about a specialized AI instead of a generalized AI. Like we were talking about with the Roomba. The Roomba is really good at vacuuming your floor, and it's really intelligent about that. And it can learn and it can figure things out. We've got machine learning doing all sorts of stuff. Google has machine learning.
That's the point I'm getting to. How does an AI handle a randomized logical paradox? And that's the reason why the Turing test is seen as being so efficient, is that how AIs should work, essentially that they're finding their own randomized pathways through conversations, shouldn't necessarily be able to know how to handle a logical paradox like what's presented in the Turing test. So essentially, the only way that a robot could be able to answer that is if it has a couple thousand maybe determined questions that it has pre-programmed responses to know how to handle. So if you can program a robot to pass the Turing test, that wouldn't really be proving that the AI is able to pass the Turing test. That would be you programming a set number of responses and
I think you're missing the excluded middle here. We got to go in a minute, but I'm just talking about like the difference between a specialized and a generalized AI. The Turing test is meant to, or any of the other tests that they've come up with, it's meant to try to figure out, do you have a proper generalized AI? But any specific test you might come up with, you could make a specialized AI that would pass it with flying colors, but it still wouldn't be a generalized AI capable of doing other things.
All right. Well,
that's basically the point. So let's have some closing thoughts here.
Well, 2018 was a pretty wild year. I hope 2019 doesn't have the drama, but yeah, if 2019 is, the markets are if the markets are gonna collapse and the state actually starts crumbling, I mean, I gotta admit I'm a little bit giddy about that, even though, it kind of has some disastrous implications for the world for a short time. That's not what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the long term.
I could just do without all these setbacks, like how the adpocalypse was a setback, or recently with Patreon, I got set back like 3 months from people leaving Patreon. They all said it wasn't because of me, just because they didn't like, what they did with Sargon. So I could really do without that. So hopefully there's a lot less than that in 2019. Filthy, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, let's see. I'm not very knowledgeable on the topic of AI, as you can clearly see. But in general, I think 2019 is going to be, unfortunately, Eso, I think you're going to be very disappointed in the sense that it's going to be a very drama-filled year. And that's going to be because things are going to start to collapse. Now, I don't know.
No. I meant like personal drama, like what happened this summer.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, let's stay away from that, like, completely.
Yeah, we could really do without that. We won't get into it. I just had another incident last night on my Discord, and it's like, just come on, people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's what I was
So-
referring to. No, in
Yeah.
political drama, I'm still looking forward to that because I was just saying earlier how hilarious I think it's going to be to see the reactions of people like Tucker Carlson and the talking heads.
Oh, if you,
Last minute super chat from Rainbow Asteroids says, Shane, you're hurting my head, and I have done my job. Okay,
Good.
you were saying?
the peak of political comedy is going to be Alexandria Occasional Cortex's response to the market collapse.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
it.
she-
I know it.
She's going to give us so much good material.
What's
All
gonna be
right.
even
Hot
funnier-
Blue is starting his live stream, so everyone over to Hot Blues to maybe ring in the new year. You might be able to do that if you're on the East Coast because we're just 2 hours away from that. As for me, I got to get going. So
Her reaction to crypto is going to be even better.
Ooh, that's going to be delicious.
I can't even imagine the idiocy that'll come out of it. From the person who said that the reason unemployment was down was people were working 2 jobs. I mean, I don't think I could come up with something that dumb if I tried.
I can't help but there's a book out there called what's it called? Atlanta Nights that was written by a whole bunch of authors, professional authors who set out to create the worst book that they possibly could. And there was even one chapter that was just completely randomly generated by a computer. The whole point was just to see if this one publishing house would actually publish it.
I love it when like scientists do that and send it to journals to see if it'll get published.
Yeah, but my point is, I wonder if Alexandria Occasional Cortex is an android designed by the most brilliant minds of our time in terms of politics, just to create the dumbest politician they possibly can.
No, she's an actor trying to scare people back into the political system. I was getting into that earlier. I mean, I was skeptical at first, but then when she said that 3 chambers of government crap, like when she when she made that gaffe, I was convinced that she was an actor, because this is a person who is pretty intricately familiar with how the state works, to the point where they're able to work their political campaign around it. So to basically work most of their like upcoming career around knowing the 3 branches of government, and then to try and pretend like she doesn't even know what they are by name. Yeah, that's.
I don't know if someone could pretend to be that. How do you come up with? You have to be really dumb to come up with something that dumb.
She's a really good actor, definitely. But
I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she is just that dumb.
I think she's just that dumb.
My suspension of disbelief was broken when she did that. That's, because it's impossible that she couldn't know that, is my point.
All right. Thanks to everyone who joined the chat. Thanks to everyone who watched and participated in the chat. Especially thanks to everyone who donated through the super chat. And as usual, thanks to all my supporters, donors, patrons, and the viewers. I hope you all have a wonderful New Year's Eve, whatever you're going to be doing. And I hope 2019 is even better for you than 2018 was. Thank you so much for watching. Stay strong and be